Hello Year 11. Today we are looking at how we test different materials for strength to start with, but there is a number of different types of tests you will be learning about over the course of the next couple of lessons. Just to warn you, we do have a test coming up, probably the end of this week or beginning to mid of next week. I can't remember when I see you on the timetable, but please just be aware that you have got a test coming up on all of the bonding and material stuff we've been doing and the stuff that we are doing this week. Okay, your title, Testing Materials for Strength. So please pause the video while you get date and title done and have a go at the do now task in the red box. Moving on to the answers for those then. A polymer is a substance made of long molecules known as polymers, and the polymer chains themselves are made up of small repeating molecules known as monomers. The difference between linear polymers and cross-linked polymers is that linear polymers are far more flexible because there are only weak forces between the parallel polymer chains, which means the material can stretch and return to its original shape, whereas a cross-linked polymer, the polymer chains that run parallel are held very, very tightly together by cross-linking bonds, and that makes them much more rigid. So things like your sort of plastic garden furniture or school chairs will be made of cross-linked polymers rather than linear. Carrier bags, polythene bags will be made of linear polymers. Excuse my gruff voice today. What's next? Type of bonding. Well, polymers are non-metals, so that's going to be covalent bonding within polymers. Okay, so lots of video clips to show you in this lesson. So as we watch those video clips, I'd like you to be just jotting down as a memory jogger for you really, how the tests are carried out and what we're testing for with each type of test. Okay, so looking at toughness and brittleness. So keyword definitions for you. Toughness, the ability to absorb shock without breaking or shattering. So that could mean shock from being dropped, shock from being crushed, shock from being hit with a force. So toughness is the ability to withstand that shock. Brittleness, a brittle object can be hard but liable to break or shatter easily. So we talked about this when we were doing ceramics. Things like mugs and plates are very, very hard, and if you lean on them, you think they're quite strong, but then if you drop them, they shatter quite easily. They are brittle. So pause the video to get those definitions down, please, if you don't have them already. I've just talked about examples, and we're going to have a clip now of one of the tests for brittleness.
Love at first bite. Hi guys, and welcome to Compressive. Today we have a family of bear figures. So I've got 3 of these. Hopefully they'll be brittle. So yeah, let's just see what happens when we crush it. was not expecting it to be that violent. Wow. So, here's the metal plate. Wow. It's a bit stuck onto it. Oh my gosh, the pieces got flat and they were like exploding all over the place. The right piece just pinged right to the side, knocking stuff over. Wow, I hoped it would be brittle, and it really was. One of the little bear's heads. Let me just crush the leftover of one of the bears. Oh my gosh, that went everywhere. I didn't have the GoPro recording, but whoa, that was so violent. Pieces were flying everywhere. You hear them flying like 5 meters all over the place. That is gosh, this is really brittle. Just like little pieces, dust everywhere. Yeah, it's just obliterated. You can't really hear it on camera, but the noises and how far they were flying and everything was just incredible. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.
Okay, so what you were watching there was a hydraulic press, which is a machine that uses hydraulic systems to apply really, really strong forces to objects. And as you can see, that was particularly brittle. So brittle objects are not very flexible, and so brittle materials aren't suitable for certain jobs. We're going to look at some materials used in building now. Now, when we build buildings such as bridges, tall skyscrapers, those are obviously going to be under considerable force. When we've got, well, with a tall skyscraper, you've obviously got the weight at the bottom of the building, you've got the weight of all the structure above. With things like bridges, you've got really, really heavy vehicles going across them. So considerable forces are being applied to lots of very heavily engineered structures. And it's really important that the materials used for those have the ability to deform. In other words, to just change shape slightly rather than shatter like the brittle materials we've just watched. So let's have a look at some more clips. Again, be making notes, please, on the type of tests that are being shown, but also some of the properties that the materials have. Oh, I missed. There we go. So what you were seeing there was not a draft in an apartment, but movement of lampshades in an apartment due to the building itself moving because of the wind. My sister lived in Hong Kong for a few years, and I went to visit her, and she lived right at the top of a really, really tall skyscraper, and you could actually feel the building sway when it was windy. It was really, really strange. But things like wind apply really strong forces to skyscrapers, and it's really important that the building just kind of deforms and moves with that, because that helps to absorb some of that force. Here's another one.
There are millions of people making incredible things from home, from their garages, from their imagination.
The Willis Tower. It shoots up more than a quarter of a mile into the sky. When it was completed in 1973, it was called the Sears Tower and was the tallest building in the world. It later lost that title, but maintained its place as the highest structure in the U.S. until 2014, when New York City's One World Trade Center opened its doors and topped the Willis Tower by almost 50 feet. Chicago is not the ideal place to build a megastructure like this one. The ground under this city is actually soft clay, which caused some early buildings here to sink in the mud. Chicago City Hall was one of them and had to be torn down. But architects and engineers here were persistent. By the time the Willis Tower was built, they knew they had to drill more than 100 piles deep down through the clay until they hit bedrock. So the towers above would have something solid to rest on, and so they wouldn't topple over. The Willis Tower was also constructed with a tubular design. But instead of just being one very tall tube, it was engineered as 9 different tubes bundled together. It's what gives the Willis Tower its unique block-like shape. The center and largest tube is the tallest. One reason it gets narrower as it rises is so there's less surface area at higher elevations. That could make the structure unstable in high winds. But still, on stormy days in the windy city of Chicago, the highest floors of the Willis Tower can sway as much as 3 feet. And that's another reason why stepping out into one of its skyboxes on the 103rd floor is such a thrill.
Okay, so another feature they mentioned of the design there was that as well as being able to sway, tall buildings tend to be narrower at the top, and that's so that there is less surface area of the building for the wind to actually make contact with. But yeah, 3 feet of sway at the top of that building, that would be pretty incredible to experience, I'm sure. I mentioned bridges just now as well. Again, if bridges were really, really rigid, then they'd be more likely to break over time under the strain of the wind force. Let's have a look at this clip. Okay, so what you were seeing there was the movement of if I go back to the picture, the movement of these suspension cables where they attach to the edge of the bridge. I can't remember how long this bridge is, but it's massive. I've driven over it. And I remember it's very, very windy along this stretch of water. And I remember feeling the bridge moving when you're on it. Probably not nearly as scary as being at the top of a skyscraper. Okay, so just an important key point. A material can be really, really tough without it having to be rigid, and a structure can be really, really tough without it having to be rigid. So just as materials can be very, very hard but still be brittle, a material can be tough without having to be rigid. Remember, we talked about deformation or deforming of materials, which is where they change their shape slightly under load. So when a building is swaying, it's actually bending slightly in the wind, so the building itself is deforming. Okay, we're going to talk about tensile strength now. So the word tensile relates to the word tension. Now, a tension force on an object is the force that we apply when we try and stretch it or pull it. Okay, so tensile strength is basically the strength of the material when it is stretched or pulled. Okay, and we measure its strength by measuring the force that's needed to actually break that material. So that was a piece of computerized equipment specially designed to stretch or apply tension forces. So if you haven't got that jotted down already, perhaps pause the video, get your definition of tensile strength down, and remember that tension force means stretching or pulling. Okay, compressive strength now. So compression is the opposite of tension. Tension forces, stretching or pulling. Compression forces, squashing. We're going to be looking at forces on a spring at some point, and compression would refer to squashing the spring, tension would refer to stretching the spring. Okay, when you stand on something or apply a downwards force on an object, you are effectively squashing it, you're compressing it. So compressive strength, very, very important to any object or piece of equipment that's got to bear any sort of weight. So let's look at how they test compressive strength. So this is showing you how strength changes over time. And this is one of the ways they actually test. So similar to the brittleness test we saw at the start, actually. They will use a machine that will squash a material. And the graph is showing you the stress that's being applied and how much strain that is putting on the material. So this is looking at the strength of concrete that's older. Sorry, it was younger. They started at 28, then 21, now 7. Different types of materials and designs, different types of stresses. Okay. So if you think about compressive stress in concrete, take your really tall skyscrapers as an example. What's going to be different at different heights of the skyscraper potentially in terms of the forces that that skyscraper is experiencing? Sorry, I think I've just messed my video up.